Berlin has quite the reputation, doesn't it? If you've spent, any time at all looking into it, you've probably heard some wildly contrasting stories. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a calm, purely analytical look at the realities of living in the German capital in 2026. We're cutting straight through the noise to bring you the actual data you need to understand exactly what it takes to live there today. You always hear these two wild extremes. On one hand, people swear that Berlin is cheap, and on the flip side, you hear, no way, Berlin has become completely unaffordable. But honestly, neither of these absolute statements gives us anything useful as a benchmark. They're just broad strokes that totally miss the nuance of actual daily life in the city.
So it all really boils down to this one question. How much money do you actually need to live comfortably in Berlin in 2026? In this explainer, we're throwing out the rumors, we're skipping the decade-old reputations, we're breaking this whole thing down using nothing but real numbers and practical costs.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the housing reality, move into food and transportation, look at the lifestyle variable, break down 3 specific financial scenarios, and finally, talk about managing your expectations.
All right, Section 1, the Berlin housing reality.
Let's be real. For pretty much everyone, housing is by far your absolute biggest monthly expense, right? It's the baseline that dictates everything else about your budget. And right now, we're looking at a massive variance, anywhere from 700 to 1,500 euros a month, and that's before utilities. This one single category basically makes or breaks whether the city feels affordable to you. But why is this range so insanely wide?
Well, it comes down to a few key variables. Location matters, obviously. Size matters. But the absolute most critical factor, the one that creates this huge gap in the Berlin housing market, is simply your contract start date.
The stark reality is kind of mind-blowing. Someone who signed a lease a few years ago might literally be paying half the rent of someone moving into the exact same building today. It's wild. It's all about timing, not the physical apartment itself. So yeah, your housing budget is heavily dependent on the exact year you happen to get your keys.
Moving right along to Section 2, food and transportation costs.
Okay, so once your rent is paid, we get into the expenses that are totally driven by your personal choices. Let's anchor the food data first. We're looking at about 250 to 400 euros a month. That's the estimate for someone who buys groceries and actually cooks most of their meals at home, which honestly is a pretty reasonable baseline for a major European capital.
But the divergence here is fascinating. If you swap out cooking at home for frequent restaurant visits, tapping away on delivery apps, grabbing that daily iced coffee, well, you can easily double that grocery amount. You could literally have 2 people living in the exact same neighborhood, right next door to each other, and their food budgets are hundreds of euros apart just because of those daily habits.
Then there's transportation. And here is a number that represents a huge financial advantage for Berlin: 58 euros. That's roughly the monthly cost of the Deutschland ticket, which gives you widespread access to local and regional public transit.
When you compare that 58 euro ticket to the absolute headache of car ownership, the fuel, the insurance, paying for parking, the endless maintenance, it's night and day. For a ton of residents, this transit system completely removes the need to even own a car. It really shows how Berlin stays highly affordable in this one specific category.
All right, Section 3, the lifestyle variable.
Now we're shifting from absolute necessities into discretionary spending. And guys, this is the area that creates the absolute widest financial gaps between people. Think about these everyday choices: gym memberships, streaming services, hobbies, travel, pets, going out. On their own, they seem pretty small, right? But they compound fast. Just taking weekend flights out of the airport can easily blow past your entire monthly grocery budget.
To put this into perspective, let's look at a super relatable example. 30 to 100 euros per month. That is what you might spend just for having a cat in Berlin, factoring in the food, the litter, pet insurance, and basic vet visits. Depending on your budget, your cat might literally end up eating better than you do. The point is, your lifestyle choices often hit your wallet a lot harder than broader economic inflation.
Which brings us to Section 4, 3 financial scenarios.
So how does this whole puzzle fit together? Let's synthesize the housing, the food, the transit, and the lifestyle into 3 distinct financial realities. First up, we've got the survival budget. That's roughly 1,500 to 1,800 euros. This usually means shared housing, a really strict grocery budget, and almost no extra spending. It's totally possible, but, restrictive. Then we bump up to the comfortable tier at 2,500 to 3,000 euros. This is a game changer. This is where financial stress really drops off. You get independent housing, regular social outings, some travel, and you can actually save money. Finally, the very comfortable tier is 4,000 euros or more. That gives you ultimate housing flexibility, plenty of travel, and serious financial resilience.
And finally, Section 5, Managing Your Expectations.
This brings us to maybe the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. The final answer? It isn't even really about Berlin itself. Two people earning the exact same income can have completely different levels of financial satisfaction. One might feel incredibly wealthy, while the other feels like they're constantly drowning. Your expectations, the lifestyle choices you make, your priorities, they dictate your reality just as much as your actual paycheck does.
But, if we look back at the data for the most balanced scenario, we hit this monthly sweet spot again, 2,500 to 3,000 euros. For a lot of residents in 2026, this is it. It gives you a really reasonable balance between actually enjoying everything the city has to offer while keeping genuine financial stability. At the end of the day, the goal isn't just chasing some magical number. It's about understanding where your money is actually going and aligning that flow with your own personal priorities. Because, as we always say, better decisions start with better data. And sometimes the most interesting stories about our lives are hidden right there in our daily numbers.
So I want to leave you with a thought to chew on today. Are your daily spending choices actively building the specific life you want in this city? Take a hard look at your own numbers. Apply what we've unpacked in this explainer and see where the data leads you. Thanks for hanging out and learning with me today, and keep exploring those numbers.